What would you rather have, a fast crossbow with a lighter stock arrow weight, or an older, slower crossbow with a heavy arrow? Fortunately, we as crossbow hunters don't have to choose between the two, but I did have an interesting observation out there in the 60-yard backyard when I was shooting both of these crossbows at a foam deer target. You might remember the live stream I did where I shot Bunjie III, the Scorpyd Deathstalker 420 with its heavier than stock arrow setup. That likes that. Shooting around 442 grains with that 150 grain field point. You might remember shooting at that deer target at 72 yards. Are you ready? Oh! I had posted some pictures of this online. When I went and inspected that target, the arrow actually had passed clean through the target. It was poking out the other side. That's pretty impressive for a 72-yard shot. When I shot the same target, now the original Bunjie shooting around 300 feet per second on a good day with a heavier arrow, the zombie slayers are a heavier arrow weighing in around 563 grains total arrow weight. Those arrows didn't pass through that target. Now that's an older, slower crossbow. Difference in penetration, the zombie slayers, 564 grain shot out of Bunjie, traveling around 260 feet per second or so, hitting this buck, this foam target right there. Didn't pass through, and I'd say, if I had to measure it, you can see what we got here. Probably got about that much penetration, right? So we're looking at this much penetration on that arrow. That is at 55 yards, shot out of the original Bunjie. The deer target was down there at 72 yards when I shot it with the Scorpyd Deathstalker 420 with a 440 or so grain arrow. The scope on Bunjie only goes out to 60 yards, so had to move the target up a little bit. But we got less penetration with the older crossbow, slower crossbow, and a heavier arrow than we did with the brand new crossbow and a stock arrow weight. Okay, that's no big surprise, right? We're talking about the modern era of crossbows, shooting around 400 feet per second, even approaching 500 feet per second, with some ultra-modern crossbows. Bunjie III, the Scorpyd Deathstalker 420, with this heavier than stock, but pretty close to stock arrow setup, 375 feet per second, 138 foot-pounds or so of kinetic energy, and generating 0.735 slugs of momentum right off the end of the barrel. At 70 yards, this modern crossbow is still sending an arrow traveling at 343 feet per second at the target, 70 yards away. 115.6 foot-pounds of kinetic energy and 0.673 slugs of momentum. That's awesome. That's pretty impressive. And that's what pushed that arrow out the other side of that foam target. Now keep in mind, field point and the foam target are both designed to stop arrows, right? They're not designed to allow for penetration. They're designed to stop it, which they did. They did stop that. But that means you got more than enough energy, way more than enough energy to shoot a deer at that distance. It would go through a deer, no problem, with a broadhead that's designed to go through. On an animal that's not designed to stop arrows. Don't take shots at that distance. I am not saying that that's appropriate because that target doesn't move. The deer does. The original Bunjie, with the 563 grain arrows, that's probably traveling around 260 feet per second right off the end of the barrel. Pull the trigger 260 feet per second because of that added weight to the arrow. Probably left the crossbow with 84 foot-pounds of kinetic energy and generated about 0.64 slugs. That's really good for an older, slower crossbow. That's a good arrow setup for that crossbow. And at the target, however, that arrow had dropped to 246 feet per second, generating about 76 foot-pounds of kinetic energy and hitting the deer with 0.61 slugs of momentum. Still pretty good for that older, slower crossbow. Here's a big thing to consider though. Bunjie III, the Scorpyd Deathstalker 420, has more momentum in that arrow at 70 yards than the original Bunjie does, even with the zombie slayers at launch. Think about that. Now, granted, You put that heavier arrow on the Scorpyd, it's still probably traveling around 330 feet per second or 320 feet per second at the target, but probably goes clean through that foam target. I don't know that you need that much penetration. I mean, come on, what are we shooting here, right? You can use any calculator on the internet to come up with these numbers and play around with those, but I want to tell you about a little secret. There's some new calculators, crossbow-specific calculators coming your way. A joint project between Death by Bunjie and Old Grumpy Hunter, and I'll announce more information on that down the road during Crossbow Appreciation Month. This is just an interesting observation I made with two different shots, similar circumstances in the 60-yard backyard. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you're enjoying Crossbow Appreciation Month. Check out the other videos from Crossbow Appreciation Month and other Death by Bunjie fun. And until next time, all hail Bunjie.